see now. It is live here. And
Oh,
hey, we are live on YouTube.
it's just a percentage thing I keep seeing in
Supposedly.
the corner of.
We are live on YouTube. All right. Sorry, where?
So, nothing. I see like a percent. Do you see like percentages in your
It's
screen?
yeah, it's uploading or
Like,
downloading. Oh, sorry, uploading the video. I don't know
oh,
why it would do that. Because we're not actually maybe it is recording here. It's not meant
okay,
to be recording here. It's meant to be like
fair enough.
directly live stream.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
anyway, we'll just give this a go if it's live stream or not.
Sure.
If it's recorded or not. Welcome back to the Download Show. This is a live stream with my friend Ben Son. Ben, I like to say is Mike Guillermo from from the Conan O'Brien show. But you're better looking and you're taller. You're the Asian Guillermo. Let's just say that.
I don't really speak Spanish, but
But you've
there's
look,
that as
you've been
well.
away. Away. You've been busy with your kid, so that's all kind of explainable. How's that? How's that been actually? Just busy with pickup and
Uh,
schooling and all that type of jazz.
yeah, kid stuff. Spanking, getting into spanking, right, and disciplining, all that fun stuff. So yes, it's
H-
yeah, it's
How's the
life
school
these days.
situation?
Hong Kong's just a fucking clusterfuck, right? Of like, it's pay to play here. You
So
don't
have
you
you?
don't pay the money to go to different little kiddie groups, then you
Yeah.
don't get access to the top tier education, and it's all pay to play here. So it's a yeah, got to figure
So
out
what?
how to navigate the system.
So have you found something or?
Well, no, we're in the sort of waiting game, I guess, because I think
Okay.
still too young for like the what is it, reception year or whatever. So we're
Wait, I
still
thought
sort
you
of
guys
just
applied. I thought you guys applied to.
we applied this year, and then we start getting
All
the
right.
interviews at the end of the year, and then you get in next year for the reception. I think is what you guys call it here.
Yeah, but then you guys, it is the end of the year now. Or sorry, yeah, the end of the
It,
school year.
this is like so now we're in the start of the application process for next year start.
Oh wow. Oh, okay. So for higher, like for my kids, we like all the kids have been accepted for next year.
No, no, no. So as in like uh accepted for next year, as in
Next
like
school year
the
or next?
reception. So mine is like for next, in order for me to get into next August cycle or whatever,
Yeah.
I need to apply this now to then
Oh,
get
I
the
see. I see.
interviews and then to start in August of next year.
2026, not school year
Yeah.
next year. Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. Got it. Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Got it.
So yes, that's
It
what we're dealing
is.
with right now.
It is. It is. I mean, that's kind of why we like our school. Like it's through school. So we kind of did it once. We kind of lucked out. We did it once, and it was during COVID. And
Yeah.
well, no, actually, for my daughter, we did it a couple times, but every single time it was kind of pretty easy, just because like we were in a smaller neighborhood, so they were
Yeah.
looking for kids. And then during COVID is when we made that big switch over to like a proper school, and that's when
Right.
everybody left, right? So it was
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
easier to get into schools. Now I've
Yeah.
heard that competitiveness is picking back up, right? Like you would know
It's
better
a
than
bunch,
I.
it's a bunch of mainlanders.
What are you applying to? Like which schools?
Oh, all of them, right? Like
Oh, really?
HKIS and blah blah blah.
Don't
Yeah, it's
do
a
the
whole
Amer-
thing, man.
don't do the
It's a whole
American
thing.
schools. Why not like Montessori? There's Montessori, Canadian. There's plenty of
Yeah,
options
yeah,
where
that's
you
all.
are.
It's all on the list. It's on the list, but they're all competitive.
Oh, right.
They're
Okay.
all competitive. It's just, too many mainlanders. Too many
There are.
mainlanders, too many bankers, too many lawyers, not
Yeah,
enough people getting fired.
you need to come over to where we are. Think about it. I'll put in a word for you. How about that?
Where are you again?
We're at Malvern,
Oh,
so
you're
you will
Melbourne. Okay.
be at Olympic. and you'll be at Signing Point or Olympic for your
I think
daughter.
Malvern is at. There's one in Saigon, so we're doing like summer camp stuff over there.
Oh, are you? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
So
so that okay, so that would be easier. Look, I think it's great. I think look, it's a new school, right? So
yeah,
relatively, so it still had to get some of the shit sorted.
yeah,
But it's got a good blend of kind of just conservative. It's British,
yeah.
um, but it's not overly British, at least here, and not even anymore in the UK. And but it's got a good blend of like just being conservative, but also like innovative and liberal, right? So it's not like too skewed to being like, woke and all that type of jazz.
I think woke is the function of the population, not really the school. Put it that way.
Well, that's the thing. It's a function of that. You're 100% correct, and the school population. So because I went to HKIS, so I have a bunch of friends that are still there, or their kids are
Yeah,
there, and they were telling me
yeah.
stuff. So that's when I was like, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a virus. I agree with Elon there. It's a virus. And the woke mind virus. It is a virus.
It is. It can be. Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah. So
man, I got
I didn't like it for ours. So
I have to move around here.
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean,
Sorry,
it's
I got
just
some
like
kids coming around.
yeah. The British ones are they're still conservative in that way, which I tend to like. But okay. So we're gonna go back to this format. Hopefully, we're gonna do this more and more and have a regular schedule because look, Ben is a good friend. He's very diversified. He knows a lot of different things, and he just likes to talk, which really helps. So let's kind of discuss a lot of things happening in the crypto world. So two things I had in my head that I wanted to kind of revisit was first, the stablecoins, the Genius Act bill that I think is
Yeah,
was being considered, and really kind of Hong Kong companies, right? So Meme Strategy, Prenetics, what was the other?
yeah,
Day Cook, adding Bitcoin or doing the MicroStrategy playbook. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so we can start with either of them. I'd just love to kind of get your opinion.
I mean, it's just a bunch of horseshit, right? As in, like, just to be blunt, right? It's like, basically companies that have no real growth strategy are, oh, I would say no real growth strategy, but let's say a growth strategy that may not be fully appreciated by the market are
Hmm.
looking for different angles, right?
Hmm.
And obviously, crypto is having another moment, right? Which, with Trump and his whole sort of crypto, leadership, right, that he's sort of taken on. I think obviously he's given, a lot of people a lot of hope, right? And then obviously BlackRock coming out. You got another, I think Ethereum finally had their sort of, ETF moment, which was a bust. But I think in general, right, everyone is sort of feeling like institutional acceptance of sort of the major coins.
Hmm.
That's a real thing, right? So so that means that there's real value attributable, and people again are looking for a way to demonstrate growth that may not necessarily be the core business, but they want to do it via, call it, asset values, right? So that's why you got Prenetics, which is like a healthcare whatever testing company that is buying Bitcoin. I mean, it's like, well, it's not even that much, right? But obviously they might get a
Yeah,
bump
it
from
is.
that. You got, as you said, meme strategy, right? If they're buying Solana,
That's
for
right.
whatever. I don't even know what that's really about. To be fair, like, why Solana versus the others?
Data
And
Cook's doing 528 million US dollars.
but yeah, but it's all, again, it's having a moment, right?
Hmm.
And is, again, I'm still a Bitcoin skeptic, as in, like,
That's right, you are.
I'm a huge Bitcoin skeptic. Look, I still have investments in Bitcoin. I just don't understand why it's going where it's going, right? And obviously, I've heard all the literature, right, around, uh, you know, devaluation of fiat, de-dollarization, digital gold, all that kind of stuff, right? And
Mm,
obviously I think past month, I think is like the data
mm,
point that people point to, right? To give sort of Bitcoin its credence of digital gold, right? It's
mm,
stable. It
mm.
stayed kind of above this $100,000 line. It's really sort of maintained its storage of value sort of construct or concept. And you're sitting there going like, well, for now, but past month has also been like a bull market, more or less, right? So I think in that sense, yeah, when market conditions are good, Bitcoin is holding up its value great. But I think if you see like a huge drawdown, let's see, I don't know,
Mm,
if like this
mm,
Iran Israel situation kind of blows up,
mm.
oil prices spike, inflation fears again, let's see what Bitcoin does then, right? I don't know.
So let's actually play out. So you're the finance guy, right? So if they're using leverage to buy Bitcoin, so if that leverage is under threat, i.e., they have to pay higher interest rates, or sorry, they just can't meet the payments, let's just say, or there's pressure, what would then happen?
Well, I think they're being responsible in terms of leverage from the perspective of I think a lot of guys are doing just like convertibles, right? So convertibles, I think, less pressure
Mm,
in terms of like maturity, right? So they could just convert it. I think there's probably, I haven't looked into everybody's documents, right? But
mm.
obviously there's conversion triggers and all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, the shareholders could get massively diluted. That's possible.
Right.
But is there like an exploding situation because you got to repay the convertible debt? Dollar for dollar? Probably not. So I think you have like I'll call it a valuation sort of situation, but I don't think you have a liquidity situation per se, right?
Interesting.
Now, setting
Actually,
aside, yeah,
that's actually a really good point. Just to dig into that a little bit more. So what you're basically saying is that the investors invest in, let's say, Diddy Cook using a convertible note. You're right. I knew that, but I didn't actually thought this through. So they invest using a convertible note. Let's just say kind of 2 year conversion. So there's no kind of liquidity risk. It's not as if it's a straight out loan, straight out debt.
yeah, unless like the investors can put it to you, but I don't think these convertible bonds typically come with like a put structure.
Mm,
So I think there's a call structure, but I don't think there's a put structure. A call as in the company can call them back at a
mm.
value, right? But I don't think there's a put structure typically. So in that sense, yeah, there's no liquidity, I think, scenario, but
Yeah.
there's a
But
huge
if
dilution scenario.
correct, so if Bitcoin, let's say from t time equals zero and time equals, let's say, 2 years. So if Bitcoin goes up 10%, so then the investor proportion of the equity, so it converts into equity, so into some equity interest into the company. It should always be. Should it be massively diluted? Because shouldn't it just be lockstep increase in value?
Well, it depends, right? Like, what if Bitcoin price goes down?
Right.
I mean, to be fair, it has nothing to do. I mean, not nothing to, but it all depends on the share price of the company
Mm.
relative to Bitcoin, because you can't really compare it against the
It's
value
not
of the
one to
Bitcoin because it's
right.
not 1 to 1, right? Yeah,
Right.
like MicroStrategy. I mean, I don't know. I forget what the ratio is, but it's definitely greater than one, right? In
Mm.
terms of the values of the value of the shares relative to the amount of Bitcoin that it holds.
Mm.
So it's technically speaking, you're already massively diluted, right? In a liquidation scenario in MicroStrategy, which is like ridiculous. So again, I don't understand it. Sailors come out and explained it to people, and basically the way it sounds is just like basically makes it sound like basically what crypto is, right? It's just all gambling, a bunch of degens, right? It's like you go in for the volatility, you trade in and out of it, but is it like a long term hold?
Mm.
I mean, if you put on your fundamental hat, probably not,
Mm.
because if something goes bad, it only owns X amount of Bitcoin relative to the share price, right? So
Mm.
your shares could fall like 70%,
Mm. Mm.
and that's
Mm.
where you're covered. So it's a big risk, which I
So
don't understand.
So not only is it a, I guess, a conversion to equity dilution risk, there's also like, I guess, business strategy risk. I guess a Prenetics, which is a healthcare company first, and really kind of understands the space, and then hard pivot to, let's just not say Prenetics. I don't think it was that much, but like Dated Cook was 528 million, right? Into crypto. That's a huge into Bitcoin. That's a huge strategic pivot. And so you're saying basically it's also like I guess expertise risk as well. If they don't trade it well, um, that could be a
Yeah.
big big problem.
I mean, look, MicroStrategy was a software business before it became like this Bitcoin holding company, right? And they still operate that little software business. So I think it's a question of like, what part of the valuation is tied to the operations and what part of the valuation is tied to, called what's in the vault, right?
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't, in my mind, it's like you just gotta pick what you are. I think if you're selling yourself as an operating company, right?
Hmm.
But most of your money is going into crypto, it's kind of like, well, as an investor going into the business, right? You should not be valuing it based on the underlying fundamentals of
Hmm.
sort of the operating business, right? You should be valuing it based on, yeah, the token, whatever token that they're holding in the vault, and then sort of making an assessment. Again, I still don't understand why people are lending to them at X value and buying shares at X value relative to the asset value, but they do.
But also I also don't quite understand like so it's very narrative driven. I've discovered. So it's like meme strategy is like the first Hong Kong company that's buying Solana. Prenetics is the first healthcare company, and DataCo is like the first female led company. I'm just kind of thinking, like, if you want Bitcoin exposure, wouldn't you just buy MicroStrategy? Just that's the first mover, right? You wouldn't buy the other ones just because, like, one, Sailor's got a strategy. He's got more expertise. He's been doing it for a while. The other stuff really just doesn't quite matter, does it? And not, it doesn't matter if it's a Hong Kong company. It doesn't matter if it's a female led. It doesn't matter if it's healthcare, or does it?
No, I mean, I think it just depends on the valuation. Unfortunate, as in like, let's just assume the Michael Saylor micro, or now it's called strategy, right?
Yes,
Is
right,
the benchmark. It's the let's say it's the benchmark, right?
right.
Meaning that like everyone assumes that any company that does what he does should be at a similar benchmark valuation. So like, I don't know, all these other companies, maybe they trade at like, I don't know, 1.5 times what's in the vault versus like whatever strategies are, I don't know what it is, 3, 4, 5, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
times it is, right? So you play for the upside, right? Which is like assume that strategy is the benchmark index for these type of companies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just buying a lot of Bitcoin, then yeah, technically speaking, given what people are doing with MicroStrategy, and assuming you had a similar capital structure, similar sort of setup, then yeah, why wouldn't you buy the other guys versus say, especially if you think of this as like a trading play, right? Not some sort of like forever play. But then
Mm-hmm.
arguably, it's like why buy a strategy rather than just buy Bitcoin?
Right. That's the other argument, right? Why not go directly in? Because you always, you'll get less than one, you get a percentage of actually what you invest in, right? Because of the fees, custodial fees, management fees, etc. Right? Why not just hold it directly?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of it's just complicated, right? Like people still don't know how to like buy Bitcoin directly.
Mm,
I mean, think about it. Crypto is still like a foreign language for like a vast proportion of the population, right? It's like you got to get a wallet, you have to
mm,
trade it through an exchange. You need to, put fiat into a stable coin and then a stable coin into whatever, right? It's just a whole
mm,
process that people cannot figure out, right? And then you're still dealing with like seed phrases and all this kind of nonsense with wallets, right? So I think part of it is like buying a micro strategy, setting aside the valuation, you just sort
mm.
of like obfuscate like all of the complication of crypto, right? Um,
Haven't gone through all the
that'd be
like
the
actually
argument, I guess.
taking taking that theme, right? Like, haven't gone through the cycles. Do you think there was this whole cycle about getting 1 billion people into crypto, right? Having seen that cycle, do you think now, where we stand in 2025, June 19, crypto is any easier or more accessible to a billion people? Or do you see that kind of window, or was that just a very special time and place, and there was just a lot of hype, and it's always going to be a niche product?
No, I mean, it's definitely more accessible for sure, right? As in, like, BlackRock has obviously made it widely available. Now you have banks that are willing to, custodize or create products based on it. So I think the demand for crypto is real.
Hmm.
And I think, it depends on what you mean, like billion people in crypto. Is it just billion people holding crypto or billion people doing things in crypto? I think if it's holding crypto, yeah, I think the goal is, I don't know if it's billion yet, but it's definitely more than it was before. But if you're talking about like people doing interesting things in crypto, oh, that's just gone backwards, right?
Hmm.
Like, what's the most
Hmm.
interesting thing that's happened in cryptos? Really, nothing.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
for me, other than stable coins, and even stable coins are like, I still don't quite understand what the hype is about, to be fair. Um, yeah, Circle IPO. You had Stripe buy some, you know, I'll call it stable coin foreign exchange type platform, right? That can sort of go between chains, go between stable coins and that kind of
Hmm.
thing. I think,
Hmm.
that all exists. The
Hong
Genius
Kong,
Bill thing, right?
yeah,
As you
Hong
kind of
Kong, I think
mentioned.
Hong Kong dollars, I think just approved a stablecoin bill as well. I think the digital yuan, there
Yeah.
was some conversations about that.
But, I still don't get it, which is like, okay, so what are you gonna do with stablecoin?
Hmm.
As in, like, what's the difference between a stablecoin and like just the dollar or the yuan and
Right,
using the dollar or the yuan, right?
right.
I really don't get it. And then, it's not like, for example,
Actually,
let's say
even
I want to buy,
sorry,
yeah,
just to jump in here, I think the euro also, what's her name, Christine Lagarde
oh,
from,
Lagarde.
yeah, she was also kind of talking about the euro as a stablecoin as well.
I mean, they've been talking. I mean, everybody's been talking about stable. Like all these governments have been talking about stable coins for like the last presidency, right? It's out there. But again, I don't think people understand. I mean, personally, I don't understand, and I don't think that people quite really understand what what's so great about a stable coin. Like outside of, let's say, microtransactions and cross-border payments to people in different countries on like an individual level,
Mm,
like outside of that, I don't quite understand what is going to be the benefit of stable coins like across institutions. I get stable coins
mm,
within an institution, right? So like
mm,
if you're JP Morgan, for example, and you run a global operation and you need to sort of move shit around.
mm,
Okay, fine. You got an internal stablecoin system, or internal blockchain system. Like I get it, right? I think like, yeah, ledgers, transaction recording, all sort of sitting there. It's permanent, easily accessible. I think that's way better than the current sort of setup, right? Which is a lot of
mm,
paper, email
mm,
approvals, all that kind of stuff, right? That is like, someone quits the bank, you got to go and sort of dig through somebody's email to figure something else out, right? But I think, yeah,
mm,
like if you have it on a permanent ledger, fine. So I think like those kinds of things make sense, but like,
mm,
what you gonna do with a stable coin?
mm.
Like, for example, I'm in the US. I want to come to Hong Kong and I'm gonna exchange my USD backed stable coin for HKD stable
Mm.
coin. What is the difference between me exchanging dollars for Hong Kong yuan, period? So there
Could
might
you,
be some, I don't know, fees, right? But
yeah, could an
uh,
argument just be a faster transaction? I forgot what was the nomenclature. It's what T plus settlement times, T plus zero, whatever. So is
I
it a faster
I
settlement
guess.
time, more transparent settlement process, and lower fees?
I don't, to be fair, like what I mean, maybe, but you got to also consider the fact that like the whole world operates in a fiat system, meaning that like dollars don't need to be backed by anything. Hong Kong dollars don't need to be backed by anything. Now you get in the stablecoin world where everything needs to be backed by something on a dollar for dollar basis, right? So like
Mm,
the limitation of it from like a transnational global perspective seems very limited.
mm, Mm.
because you are limited. The tokens in circulation or whatever is limited by the the reserves that you got to have, right? So
Mm.
like, how big can this actually get? You know what I mean? As in like, you're not going to be. I don't know how many dollars are in circulation, but it's definitely greater than 36 trillion. So you're sitting there going like, are you gonna have 36 trillion dollars backing 36 trillion
Right.
US stable coins? Like, well, and then you get to a point where it becomes like, okay, well, everybody has to back everything up by a dollar, right? Or whatever, whatever currency you back it, like dollar, yuan, dollar, whatever, right? Then you kind of get to this point of like, have we just recreated a system that we already had? And what is the purpose of that?
Now, having said that, like, could you see a scenario where let's say it's one-to-one backed, right? So USD, let's just say USD, because how the market share of USD, despite all the conversation about Bitcoin and yuan, is still the dominant force, right? What is it, 20, 30% market share, USD?
Uh, I gotta imagine it's way more than that, actually. You got
Uh,
Tether, you got USDC. I mean, I assume they're the vast majority of the stablecoin population, given.
dollar assets comprise about 60% of global foreign currency reserves. The next largest share is the euro at 20%.
Oh, you're
So let's
talking
just say
about
like,
reserves. Yep.
yeah, just dollar denominated kind of commerce. So okay,
Sure.
so let's just imagine a scenario. It's like one to one, and then everyone starts transaction in stable coins now. Fiat is, for whatever reason, fiat is not used really. Still, it's one-to-one backed, and then at some point, it's one to, stable coin to, it's 1 to 0.5 or 1 to 0.1.
Yeah. Then it's kind of arguably like, what was the point?
Hmm.
As in, like right now, we're at like $1 to, what is $1 actually worth?
Right,
Like
right.
relative to what? You know what I mean? Because it's all fiat, it's all paper money, it's meaningless, right? It's backed by faith, confidence, that kind of thing, right? So it's kind of like, you can benchmark it against gold, right? Obviously, like a dollar per ounce of gold has obviously gone down
That, that,
significantly over time, right?
that's actually kind of what I'm trying to parallel. It's like what, 1978 Bretton Woods. So it used to be
Yeah,
one to gold, and then over time Nixon, I think in 1978, just said screw it and let's not back it up from gold, and just kind of became free floating afterwards.
yeah. But I'm saying, like, to go back to that system is, I just don't even know how you go back to that. As in, like, let's just say we went to like a Bitcoin reserve, right? Like everyone's talking about a Bitcoin reserve.
Mm,
Let's
mm,
say that will be the reserve for the world, right? I mean, ultimately, you're still going to run into like the same scenario with gold, right? Which is like, there is just so many Bitcoins available to
mm,
back up your reserve.
mm,
And so, how do you even, what I mean? Like, I don't even understand how you would manage an economy of like where we are today with the amount of Bitcoin that is available.
mm,
And if anything, if you were thinking about going down that route, I would say like, though, whoever owns the most Bitcoin is going to be the winner in all this, right? So I
mm,
also don't see why, I guess, a government
mhm,
would
mhm,
open up an additional attack vector,
mhm, mhm,
in terms of like, society and everything else, given everything else that they need to worry about in the world. Like, why would you, you know, again, I think a country that is not the US
right.
would obviously want to do this, right? Because obviously the US is weaponizing the dollar. But I think like what we see now is that, yes, when you weaponize a currency that is the dominant currency, obviously whoever controls the currency kind of runs sort of the economy, global
Mm,
economy, right? That's kind of what we're seeing these days.
mm,
I mean, yeah, I can see why people would want to sort of push in that direction. That is not the US dollar, but I think to sort of put the whole world on stablecoin would be difficult.
mm,
I
mm,
think for
mm,
the US to accept, in the sense of like, what does that do to the US dollar? And I think obviously maybe China wants to do it, or maybe some other, maybe Europe wants to do it.
mm.
Fine. But like, I think the reason is not because of transaction fees and, making things seamless, right? It's all about how do you sort of weaponize the currency in your
Mm.
favor. So my view is
Actually,
like this all is interesting for people and governments because of it creates a new way to try to figure out, call it dominance,
right.
if that makes sense.
So how much actually the US government, the treasury, I think basically had a bunch of Bitcoin, right? Um, let me
Everything they
see.
confiscated basically
Yeah,
through
no, exactly. That's right.
raids and whatever.
It's the United States is the largest known stateholder of Bitcoin in the world, about 200,000 BTC. So 200,000 out of, what was it, 21 million, right?
It's not a lot.
Is what percentage? It's yeah, about 1%. Right. So they don't
Tiny.
really have an advantage there anyway.
That's what I'm saying. So, I think there's this view. I think that's maybe why Bitcoin goes up, period. Is like if well actually, yeah, now that I'm really thinking about it, right? Yeah. If governments are going down having like a Bitcoin reserve, then accumulation of Bitcoin is the key factor in maintaining dominance. And
Hmm.
that's why people go, yeah, that's probably the only valid argument for why Bitcoin should go up in terms of people hoping and praying or having a thesis, right? That like
Hmm.
Bitcoin is going to become ultimately the reserve asset for to support fiat currency. If that is true, then yeah, I think Bitcoin should definitely go up, and Bitcoin going to 1 million makes a lot of sense because that's the only way. I mean, the demand for Bitcoin would be so high by the largest organizations in the world,
Hmm.
put it that way. So, I mean, look at gold, right? Gold, I mean,
Yes.
yeah, obviously there's a lot of individuals buying gold, but central banks are buying gold like crazy.
Right. Actually, so someone actually made a comment today. So in preparation for this interview, I was asking actually people about what their impressions were around stablecoins and Bitcoin, and someone kind of made the point: Bitcoin price actually, I haven't verified this, has not really gone um, as high. What was it? As high as the quote was as it was in 2020. We're barely at the high from 2020 in inflation adjusted dollars. So I didn't have a chance to verify that. Um,
Okay.
but what was the high in 2020? I'm just
The price of Bitcoin
yeah,
wasn't like
yeah.
70, maybe 60, 70.
Let's just see. So it was no. I actually said Bitcoin was trading close at 28,000 on
Oh,
December 31st, 2020.
oh, 28. Okay.
So
3 years ago.
does that sound right? Actually, let's just say adjust the price of Bitcoin in 2020 for inflation, and price in 2025 is, and let's just see what that is.
I suspect that is not
It's close.
correct.
Right. I would assume that it's close.
Well, I mean, if Bitcoin has gone up like 4 or 5x in 5 years, I don't think inflation
Yeah, right?
has really run that
Compounded
high.
still. Yeah. It still seems, yeah, okay. All right. Well, we've debunked his comment. Yeah. Cumulative
I
rate
don't know,
of inflation from 2021 to 2025 is only 20%.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We've debunked that comment then. High, let me just make sure, let me just, high of Bitcoin in 2020. Let's just make sure. But 28,000. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's not accurate.
I,
But it hasn't
yeah.
gone up
Hmm.
as high as gold, has it?
I mean, gold's gone on a run, right? So, I mean, to be fair, I think Bitcoin is still the best performing asset.
Mm,
I mean, even
mm.
if I suspect if you index it from that point to now, gold's probably only gone up like 3 times, maybe four. I want to say like 3 times though. So in
No,
that
no.
sense, it's kind of like
Okay.
gold's definitely gone up more. I mean, Bitcoin's definitely gone up more than gold.
Now, but isn't there a measure in finance to like a risk or volatility kind of adjusted measure?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Sharp ratios. I'm sure
Sharp
based on Sharp
ratio.
ratio, gold is definitely considered a better risk-adjusted return than
Okay.
Bitcoin for sure, just because of how volatile Bitcoin has been since 2020.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I'd say that's probably a bit of a. But the thing is, right? Like, I don't know. The other problem I have with Bitcoin is like, for example, if you think about like the the miners, the
Mm,
Bitcoin miners, right?
mm,
Like in normal mining, when the price of the commodity is increasing, typically the miners will increase their production
mm,
capacity, right?
mm,
But in Bitcoin world, I would say the miners have probably not done that as much relative to what a gold miner would do or an oil sort of driller would do or producer. I think
mm,
they've like diversified into, GPUs.
mm, mm,
So I
mm.
sit there and I go, well, if you are a Bitcoin miner, full faith and confidence that Bitcoin price goes up, but and then obviously it's not that Bitcoin prices haven't been going up, it has been going up, right? So meaning that like if I'm a Bitcoin miner, I'd be like, issuing convertibles to like expand out my mining machines, right? Buying more mining
Mm,
machines, mining more Bitcoin. But I think these guys have all sort of shifted towards becoming like, GPU resellers.
mm, mm, mm. That's actually a
So
really
you're
good
sitting
point.
there going like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I also don't get that either, where I'm like, I mean, the guys who are actually digging this stuff out of I don't know, the matrix code are telling
Yep.
you that they're not investing as much in
Right.
mining this stuff, even though the price is good. They'd rather, do AI GPUs.
Actually,
I don't
so
get it.
actually, someone made the comment again. I won't reveal my sources, but he was saying
Hmm.
basically the reason one of the reasons why, despite all the kind of narrative about again these Hong Kong companies, maybe Hong Kong companies don't really matter, but the price hasn't moved because mostly they're all custodied by Coinbase. Again, from a banking perspective, they're all custodied by Coinbase. But it's already been
Hmm.
is it true that it's already then been bought up and Coinbase just held it on behalf? Is that so basically nothing was off the market and that's why the price hasn't gone up? Or someone else had custody it and it's
Mm,
just really shifting the custody of the asset rather than just buying off the market?
I mean, probably true, right? As in, like, yeah, I mean, well, let's put it this way. I guess it could be a private transaction, right? As
Mm,
in, like, you just maybe it doesn't hit the exchange if it's
mm,
just, but no, that shouldn't be true, right? Because I mean, like, think about it, right? If you're like, JP Morgan, you're trading stocks all day, you're definitely holding things in custody, and your clients are trading between different accounts, right? You probably have all your clients' accounts set up and they hold different stocks. You're just moving stocks from one account to the other. So I don't think that should mean that the price doesn't move based on that action.
mm.
So, and if anything, if that is the argument for why for Bitcoin price movements, that is also fundamentally flawed in my view, because isn't Bitcoin supposed to be super transparent? Everything on the ledger, everything recorded, every transaction out there, meaning that like everybody has access to all the volume price information. And therefore, if the price doesn't move based on that kind of stuff, then like what are we talking about? Then Bitcoin really fails in that sense as a for what it's supposed to stand, or for what crypto is supposed to stand for in general, right? But then Bitcoin itself being the safest asset, if all the transactions are not recorded on, quote unquote ledger, and therefore people can't make investment decisions because things are being done opaquely, that would be wild to me, uh, in general, right? So,
Could it on that particular case of let's just say transferring let's just say the custody of the asset, couldn't it just be like, you know, speculating here, I don't know, entity A just takes custody as the entity, takes custody of the asset, And so that just falls under, the entity's balance sheet, but there's no transaction in and out of that particular, let's say, wallet, and doesn't flow through an exchange. It just takes custody of the entity or the asset.
I mean, I would assume that, yeah, if you're just like recustodizing it, that should not mean that I mean, let's put it this way, in stock world, that'd be like illegal, right? If that moved the price, because you'd just be like wash trading,
Mm,
just like left hand, right hand, right? So
mm,
I think if it's just kind of like moving, and again, I'm not an expert in like how things move and how that gets recorded and all that kind of thing, but like at a high level, at least at a bank, right? If you're just moving assets from one wallet or one account from the next account in hopes of like tricking the market, right, into there being like all these transactions happening at prices, that is absolutely illegal. So I
and
assume with crypto,
I'm gonna actually
yeah,
push this a little bit more. So let's just say I have so much Bitcoin that I want to get out,
yeah,
but I don't want to move the market. And so I'm going to
yeah.
allow you to customize it. And then now the currency of exchange in lieu of some equity. And now what we're transacting is equity, not Bitcoin. Would that make sense?
What we're moving is equity, not Bitcoin.
Now what we're
As in, like
transacting
you're telling
now
me
is
so you're telling me you
shares.
want to move an asset based on different assets?
Yes. So I'm let's say you're the CEO of the company. I don't know. I'm gonna grant you the Bitcoin. Let's say I've got 100,000 Bitcoin. Not 100,000.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a lot. But I've got a
Yeah,
lot of Bitcoin. I can't really sell
yeah.
it on the open market. I don't want to sell on the open market. So I'm gonna let you custodize that. You're gonna give me shares in return, and then now I've got shares that are liquid on a public exchange like New York Stock Exchange, and yeah, that's just a little bit easier to transact.
But I mean, like in stock market world, like all this stuff is like it's disclosed and it's supposed to be disclosed. So
Got
I
it.
think it becomes a question of disclosure versus like whether or not you can or cannot do it. I think it's because it's market moving
Mm,
in some respect, right? So even with like, companies and their CEOs or C-suite, right? Or even board members selling shares, this all gets disclosed. I think timing of disclosure, again, I'm not an expert in that stuff, but ultimately it all comes out into the public domain via filings, right? So
mm.
there's a strong regulatory framework for this kind of stuff. Crypto, I'm not too sure. Bitcoin, I'm not too sure, but I assume there is definitely some sort of, especially with Bitcoin and everyone sort of that's around it. I'm sure there's some disclosure stuff that is, required. But again, I don't know how developed that framework is. Put it that way.
Right.
But like MicroStrategy goes out and buys X amount of bitcoins. It ultimately gets disclosed.
Mm.
Like you always see
Uh,
some announcement, right? Ah, MicroStrategy bought
yeah.
like whatever twenty
No, that's
thousand
true.
Bitcoin. But to be fair,
Yeah.
like that kind of thing, I'm always surprised in the sense that like I don't get how people who buy Bitcoin for a living or look at Bitcoin for a
Mm,
living as an investment asset class wouldn't already be able to see that movement
mm, mm.
in the Bitcoin, as in like, it's on the blockchain, right?
That's right.
So
And
I
then front
assume
run it.
that people would front run it or like be part of that volume, right? Which is
Mm,
like it's happening. So
mm,
like why are you not seeing sort of that price action? I don't know. Maybe
mm,
that's the arbitrage. I have no idea. Maybe people do see it,
mm.
but I don't know
Okay,
that
that's
they see
fine.
it. But
Okay.
I always find it interesting that the market always moves every time like that sort of disclosure comes out, where I'm like, people should already know,
Yeah, it's just
my
for
view at
me.
least.
It's just maybe I'm just deviating to like a very skeptical view, just because I don't. Let's say Day Cook's market cap is I think 200 million, 300 million, and then suddenly there's a $580 million mandate to buy Bitcoin, and I'm just like, I don't quite understand how that would come around, unless your strategy is that good. But
I mean,
sorry,
do they even have the cash though?
No, Dataco has a market capitalization of 29 million. Now they're raising 580 million to buy Bitcoin. I mean, how did she become Kathy Wood all of a sudden? I don't quite understand it.
I mean, dude, you gotta be. I mean, let's this way. I mean, Hong Kong is like this, though, right? As in, like these little micro cap companies. I mean, I don't know if you've read the literature, but I mean, like Nasdaq has started to like really scrutinize these things, right? Because they like fucking get listed somehow, some weird way through the pink sheets or backdoor or whatever, and then they explode like 1,000% and they fall like 900% the next day.
Mm.
So Hong Kong, Asian stocks, these small caps, they're very what's the right word?
What? Volatile.
Yeah, let's just go with
Yeah.
volatile,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, let's go with that.
Right.
So when a $29 million market cap company comes out and says, I'm gonna, buy 500 something $1 million of Bitcoin, you're sitting there going like, well, you know,
Yeah, that's right. Like,
I don't know,
how in the
right?
world?
Like,
Right? How in the world? What? Yeah. Right. No. Exactly. Right.
yeah,
Actually, yeah. This conversation helped me process why my spidey sense was just out of whack.
yeah, something's not right there. Again, let's put it this way though. Like I said, right? I think with all these things, if you're taking like a trading view on something like this,
Hmm.
you could. So that's why I said you can make money on something like
Hmm.
this, right? I would not
Hmm.
say. I think it's more just like your time horizon is a factor in playing
Hmm.
in this sort of new world of Bitcoin vault strategies or or crypto token strategies, right? I think it's just time horizon matters, and I think, but see, that's like what's really interesting about that is it becomes the whole thing that crypto has become recently, right? Which is like it's just a bunch of meme coins, and
Hmm.
everyone gets the game, right? Which is like you get some super famous person to back your coin, the thing spikes, and the last dollar out gets fucked. But those
Right.
guys, the first dollars, these guys crush it. But the only
FIFO.
beautiful thing,
First,
well,
first in, first
yeah,
out. Always be FIFO.
exactly. But the beautiful thing about this whole thing, as I understand it, is that like this is what crypto is right now. And
Hmm.
everybody in crypto understands this
Hmm.
is what's being done. So like if you get fucked, it's okay because I signed up for this. Okay,
Hmm.
fair enough, right? So I think with this vault game that people are doing,
Hmm.
similar. But I think
I see.
because of that, I think you're going to see some sort of regulatory hammer come down, right? Because, like, yeah, sure, it can happen in crypto land, but you get those billion users that we're talking about, and you start seeing, people, jumping off roofs or crashing their
Hmm.
cars into walls because they just lost their fortune. I think you're going to see regulators be like, dude, we got to sort of, get a handle around all this kind of stuff.
I see. So what you're saying, basically, this is the kind of the crypto name of the game, and these practices and the mindset, FIFO. But
Yep.
then first in, first out for our audience members. But then, and that's kind of spilled over to the world of public equities. But the
It's
crypto
already
investors,
happening. Yeah.
it's already happening, and the crypto investors
Yeah.
know that game, so they sign up, they go in, first out.
Oh yeah.
But obviously, they don't tell the rest of the retail market, so they're in. They see the price action, and they come in, and then they're gonna get squashed, and they're gonna
I
lose their money.
mean, I think, it's one of these things where like, well, we're already seeing it, right? I don't like it doesn't even have to be like, I mean, by the way, like this is not even a shade being thrown at this game or crypto people at all, right? This is just like what happens in
Mm,
a retail bull market, right? Which
mm,
is like people are just more risk on. So they're willing to play different games, right? So, it happens in very legitimate scenarios, which is like biotech companies, right?
mm,
Biotech companies, these guys come out, they say, we're in phase one, phase two trials. And then, they raise a bunch of money, a couple $100 million. And then all of a sudden the stock crashes 100% or what, not 100, but 95%, right? Because phase three trial didn't work out. sucks. But the market caps of these companies obviously get bid up beyond the amount of cash that they hold in hopes of, right? And so, again, in reality, yeah, there should be some premium against the cash that sits on it because there's some, there's a catalyst, right? But you could arguably say that's the same thing with crypto, right? These Bitcoin backed companies, Solana backed companies, there is a catalyst. I don't know what the catalyst is. Solana, greater acceptance of the token and institutional market, blah, 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 right? So there's catalysts, right? So the prices could go up. And as a result of that, the people who bought a $29 million market cap company could be sitting on, 500 plus million. So they could literally like 50x.
Hmm.
So that's all possible. But I think it's kind of like SPACs as well, right? SPACs, very legitimate product. There is a couple $100 million from the market, but a couple $100 million sitting in the bank. But these things are valued somewhere like a couple billions of dollars, billions and billions, because they're like, what are they going to buy? Is this thing going to be worth something? Robo taxis and all kinds of other, look at Chamath, right? That fucking SPAC king, but all his SPACs are like down 90%, right? So
right, I heard.
Yeah, so I think like what happens is regulators came in, right? And they're like, dude, SPACs have to be structured different, the incentives have to be different, et cetera, et cetera. So I think like, again, when retail money gets hurt, you see huge volatile, you see, some weird insider dealing stuff, right? I think again, this is all it's not specific to crypto, it's specific very much to risk on retail bull market. And crypto is now just sort of part of that wave right now with this whole vault thing, right? So I suspect, my guess is, yeah, if people get hurt very badly because they're participating in things like this, then yeah, you'll definitely see some regulatory hammer come back. But that's going to be the risk for all these types of little companies. But again, I think specific to crypto though, people get the game. The people who play crypto, the degens, right? The traders, like they understand this game very well.
Right.
So they're probably going to be minting it. And then, see what happens.
They're going to be minting until the hammer comes down. Now, that could be
Exactly.
a 1 month window or 3 months window or a 1 year window, but right.
Exactly. Nobody knows. So,
do you want to talk about, do we actually kind of want to talk about how this then extends to actually kind of the US presidency and Trump and crypto and how do you generally feel about that?
I mean, well, let's put it this way. So, by the way, I like Trump. So,
I know who
again,
you voted
nothing.
for.
Yes, I like the guy. I mean, look, I think he is unconventional in his ways. But when it comes to, I would say things like the market and crypto and all these things. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? There's some insider dealing with, I would say, right? There's definitely something going on. I couldn't tell you. Yeah, I mean,
That's
again,
it. Some.
I'm not an expert. I don't know. Maybe all this stuff is very legitimate, and he's sort of, I don't know, whatever. But what I will say is, it is all too coincidental in terms of things that he says, things that he proposes, and how that sort of impacts the market and when and the movements and the actions. So all that being said is like, well, yeah, I think Trump is
Oh,
very interesting for crypto.
are you talking about the price
But
movement for crypto, like for his coin, or are you talking about like even in the
for
public market?
everything, for
Right.
everything,
I've heard about
for
that.
everything.
I haven't really
Oh
looked
yeah.
into it, but I have heard.
I mean, look, I'm not an expert. I've only based on my own observations, based on what I read and what I see, you could definitely make a case that there's definitely a lot of self-interest type actions that are being had in the
And
context of him
right.
serving the public, obviously, right? So he's obviously doing things in the public's benefit, but I think he's definitely clipping a little bit along the way.
Watering his
It
beak,
looks
as
like
they
it.
say.
Or yeah,
And for our listeners, so what I've heard, and just to be clear, what I've heard is basically the people around him have benefited from these these price actions, not to mention his own kind of benefit from his coin action.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that what you're referring to?
absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. So in that sense, like, look, it is what it is. Again, I mean, we had senators do it. We had, other government officials, right? They were able to buy stocks ahead of their how they vote on bills and knowing what the outcome was. So I mean, in that sense, it's sort of like, is it that illegal, right?
Mm,
In It's illegal in the general sense, obviously, right? Insider
sure.
trading,
Right, right. I was
but
gonna
it
say
doesn't
that's
seem to be, yeah.
it's a slippery,
But I
slippery thing.
mean,
Right.
it is. But in the context of like the government, it not that illegal, right? So yeah, I mean, if you think of it that way, and obviously given how close he is to crypto, and I mean, he's probably the biggest proponent of crypto within, I'd say, government spheres globally, right? So if you put it that way, then yeah, I think crypto's definitely got a bit of a tailwind, right?
Mm,
But this will only be as good as it is good for him.
mm,
So the question now becomes like when he loses interest or something really bad happens, right? I don't know, like another crypto winter because of fraud and especially if like let's say we find out, like let's say it gets super publicly disclosed that like, you know, Trump Jr. and David Sachs and these guys have just been fucking like doing some really shady stuff on the crypto side, and that stuff kind of comes out, then he like distances himself, right? And when
mm,
that happens, yeah, crypto can get obviously flops. So I think like everything right now, a lot of headline risk.
mm.
Um, it's just sort of Trump himself and like how he's feeling about certain things.
Right. That's actually a really good point. So not only, and that kind of wrapped it all up actually very well. So it's not necessarily liquidity risk. There's um, talking about kind of the treasury bit. There's like the convertible note risks, the equity risk, the dilution risk. There's also the headline risk. Is if it
Oh
ceases
yeah.
to be part of the overall narrative, if Saylor, doesn't want to do this anymore, if Trump doesn't make money anymore in crypto, this is all going to disappear.
I mean, I don't know if it disappears, but I think you'll definitely get a period in which, people will question why they did what they did, why they invested in what they invested in. Look, I think it's not specific to crypto. I think the whole, like, every asset class is going through this right now, which is like, fundamentals are very separate from
Mm,
narratives. And I think the
mm,
market is very sort of narrative driven right now. So
mm,
very liquidity heavy or liquidity driven, narrative driven. Fundamentals are sort of like a little bit on the back burner, right? And arguably you could have said this is like for any period in the market, right? Narratives
mm,
matter, which I
mm.
think is true. But I think when you look at fundamentals, it is just, outside of a few, I'll call it segments of the market, I think fundamentals are kind of useless right now. Famous last words, but yes, I think fundamentals in the markets seem very, yeah, you're not going to get anywhere with fundamentals, put it that way.
Well, would you kind of correct that statement and say like fundamentals do matter, but in the sense that you get a premium, you get a narrative premium. Ultimately,
Uh,
the fundamentals do matter in the sense that if you don't have the fundamentals, like I guess the probability of you surviving risks, like the narrative risk it gets lower.
yeah, I mean, well, let's put it this way. Maybe I'll add the famous quote, right? Which is like, what is it like? The stock market in the short term is a voting machine, but in the
Mm,
long run, it's a weighing machine, right? I think that's kind of how fundamentals play out
yeah,
generally, right? But I
right.
think the narrative is definitely short term, right?
Mm,
Um, and then obviously there's a long term element to it. So obviously you have to pick the right horse in the narrative, right? That'll sort of
mm.
get you the weighing part. But I think short term wise, yeah, we are very narrative driven, voting driven, put it that way.
And that's a really good point. So basically, you're saying the current zeitgeist is also just very short term.
Oh yeah. For
Right.
sure. For sure. I mean, everything about the market. I mean, everything right now in particular. Let me look. I think everything, yeah, zeitgeist, right? I think that's kind of the right way to put it. It's like we are in an era that this is the era right now. And then obviously it will change, like everything does, right, over time.
Hmm.
And at least with the US, right? Yeah, it could change like literally in a year
Hmm. Or even
because
shorter.
of midterms and all that
Sure.
kind of stuff, right? So I think in that sense, I mean that's probably why, let's say, fundamentals do matter, right? Because anything can happen. So
Hmm.
you obviously want to be able to sleep well at night. But again, I think it's all based on your time horizon, risk appetite, and again, anyone can make money. It's just kind of like depends on how you want to do it.
That sounds good. I think that's about all the time we probably should allocate to this. Are there any points you want to cover today? Any other points?
Well, look, me personally, Genius Bill, we didn't talk about it. Again, I'm not like well versed in it, but the only thing I will say is I think people that think that Visa and MasterCard and all these guys are going to go away because stablecoins are now sort of, getting some push from the government, I think are probably going to be very disappointed in the sense that, like, if Amazon and Walmart and all these big box retailers could have taken over their, payment operations, they would have done it a long time ago. I don't think stable coins make it any less complicated for them to manage. So in that sense, I think this Genius Bill it's interesting. I think the people that it will disintermediate will not be the big guys. I think you'll probably see it maybe more on the small guys. So think of, Western Union and guys like that, right? These sort of short term, or call it non-complicated money wiring businesses. I think you'll sort of see some interesting things happening down there.
Hmm.
Maybe some in the more, fintech sort of oriented, call it smaller fintech,
Hmm.
maybe. But I think, like, if you're thinking of like the credit card processors and those guys, I would highly doubt. And the other thing is, like, let's put it this way, this just the way people are reacting is like they assume that, like, the credit card guys haven't thought about their own stable coin.
Hmm.
It's like,
Hmm.
surely. I mean,
Hmm.
PayPal's had their own stable coin. I mean, they've talked about stable coin for a long time. Visa, MasterCard also been talking about stable coins and crypto in general for a long time. So I think there's also again, pendulum kind of swinging one direction, and people not really thinking of the fact that, yeah, these huge companies have obviously thought about all of this as well. So that'd be my own thing about the Genius Bill. Is like, yeah, it's a Genius Bill, sure, but I don't think that means that other people are retarded. Put it that way.
On that note, thank you for tuning into the show. Thanks for coming in.
See you again. Thanks, Tack. Talk to you later.